everyone. Today I'm really happy to welcome Christine Baltas. She's an experienced B2B marketing and business development expert. She works across the legal, consulting, and real estate sectors. She's a strategic marketer, she's a writer, she's a thought leader. She works really hard to champion creativity, clarity, and community in everything she does. Christine, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Thanks for having me.
No problem. No problem. So let's kick straight off. So, Christine, can you share how you first got into marketing and what drew you to marketing as a profession?
Sure. So I first got into marketing, well, by design, but it wasn't my area of study. So I started off as a graphic designer and then graduated in art direction and advertising and business advertising. And that was in Melbourne. And I worked in a small agency there before deciding to take some time out. And eventually I moved to London, which is where I built the career I have now. And that was where I fell into marketing. I found a role working in an architect's practice, which gave me the understanding of that particular industry. But I also took an interest in how they promoted themselves. So one thing led to another. And I fell into the property built environment industry, but working in in-house client-side marketing roles from there. And that also led me to ensure I had a pretty sort of well-rounded marketing and business development role. So it was really responding to what the business was needing in terms of how they went to market, but also how they connected with their own client relationships. So it was from then, and it's probably over, I don't know, the last 2 decades that I've honed that skill.
Okay. And you stuck with that sector with a sort of slight deviation into professional services. Is that because it really sort of piqued your interest?
Yeah, and we can talk a little bit more into that as well, because the property space, the built environment space is so broad. So my first foray into that was working with architects and working with a number of different practices and different types of sizes and structures. And from there, I then fell into working with contractors, very, very different type of organization and culture. But I stayed within that sphere for probably about 10 years. But when I did move into professional services, it was working for a law firm that specialized in real estate. And nearly 50% of their practice area was in real estate. So I think it was more about understanding how to work with different types of cultures and stakeholders, but having a main focal point around that key understanding of real estate, property, the built environment has helped me do that. And then I think from there, getting to understand the legal sector a bit more, very different. But there are elements in terms of the professional services arena with architecture, with engineering, for example. So I think it's about understanding business organizations and their structures. If you're going to sort of move from one to the other, you need to understand a partnership structure, for example, or you need to understand how a corporate environment works. So that's also stood me in good stead to move and adapt into different organizations, but having a real understanding about how they operate. So that's what's led me to where I am now, which is operating cross-industry in professional services, but heart still in real estate, I'm afraid.
Yeah. And are there any specific roles that have sort of shaped that path? Obviously, that first position in an architect's office was pivotal, kind of kick-started everything. But have there been other roles that have kind of, shaped your path?
I think each role has. And when I was starting out in the first 5 to 7 years or so, I think it used to be a big question where people say, well, how do you move around like that? How do you go from one to the other? Moving between architecture to construction, from construction into law, and from law into accountancy. They do sound like big jumps, and they have been pivotal in each of those areas, chiefly because they are different environments to operate in.
Yeah.
But I have drawn from pretty transferable skills in ensuring that, you know, what I have is of value to that particular organization. And it's normally
Yeah.
around the principles of marketing and business development, which we can go into. Is making sure that you're
Yeah.
really clear on who it is you're providing a service to and how you're meeting
Yeah.
that need, but then also managing that stakeholder group internally. It's being client side is a very different world to
Yeah.
agency. And I've remained client side up until recently with my own consultancy. So each area has been pivotal, and each sector has been part of sort of shaping my own experience there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and we will talk about that a bit later. But yeah, I agree with you that switching between industries, if you go back to the basics of marketing, is actually quite straightforward because you're going to start that whole kind of customer research piece from the beginning anyway. It just helps to know the players and the kind of terminology
Yes.
and
You have to be clear on that, and I think that's what people mean when they ask
yeah,
the question. It's more how are you understanding that stakeholder mix, and I think that makes
yeah,
you a good consultant, or I think that makes you a good
yeah,
external person to come in as well, because you sort of remain impartial in that way,
yeah,
but you also get to understand in quite a deep sense their strengths and their threats and all the other things that go along with that.
yeah, yeah, agreed. So, I mean, looking back at your kind of 2 decades experience, is there anything that you would do differently if you were kind of starting again now?
I've thought about that. And
Yeah.
I'd probably say no, because I've always remained curious,
Mm,
and so I've liked the opportunities that have come to me. I wouldn't change where I've gone to or the work that I've done. But I would say this, now that I have got a couple of decades under my belt. I would say, you know, to anyone going into this, you know, have confidence in your own thinking, have trust in your ability. And that's the bit that I think we all could do with when we're starting out. I will go back to, you know, going into the industry as I did. I had a sort of a naivety around working in the corporate environment and what that means. I also did take it as read that you were going to get challenged, sometimes because of gender mix or
yeah.
a misunderstanding of what the role of a marketer and business developer is, because
Yeah.
you can get into it from any angle, really. It isn't just the point of a tertiary education. And so I think
Mm,
where people can get a little bit misguided on that is the misunderstanding of what marketing and business development is on the client side, because it can be a whole raft of
yeah.
things, and the definition of that needs to be clear in an organization. So
Yeah.
it sort of goes,
Yeah.
I'm answering
Absolutely.
that question in a way of, you know, my learnings have been, you know, you having
Mm,
to position yourself in a certain way as a professional, and in the
yes.
industries that
Yeah.
I've worked across, it hasn't been like the FMCG markets, for example, which is much more straightforward,
Yeah.
or the B2C markets. B2B is a really interesting
Mm,
world. And I think that's being more around the relationship building aspects of it as well. So to answer that question, it's about being clear and
yeah.
understanding in your role and the value that you add.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you've taken the marketing and the business development kind of hats because, a lot of B2B marketers leave business development to a business development team. I know it's quite common for B2B marketers to focus on brand and reputation and corporate marketing and leaving that lead gen to a business development team. So it's interesting that you span both of those and that you see both of those as your responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they are, as we know, pretty holistic things. I
Yeah.
have also looked at PR in the past, but I don't even profess to have that in my toolbox. But in the past, people
Yeah.
would say, "Oh, could you whip up a press release for us as well?" I don't pretend
Yeah.
to have all the tools of the trade. I have simply focused on
Yeah.
areas where I've gone into roles where the business has said, "We need somebody like you who's great at managing relationships and can help us win work."
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
do see that marketing and business development angle working quite neatly together. You do see more of
Yeah.
that in the legal sector where they do have a combined
Right.
role. But I would have to say the client facing aspects of what I have done, bringing in work, bringing in tender opportunities, was in
Mm,
construction and in architecture
right.
where they
Okay.
wanted you to go out and meet clients. They wanted you to go
Mm,
out and bring in the opportunity and effectively operate as a sales manager.
right. Okay. So
So
you're
there's
almost sort of that CRO, yeah, kind of chief revenue. I think they're calling it
it's
now,
about
like that
bringing
sort
in,
of
yeah, it's
CRO
about
role.
bringing in work. So
Mm,
I've had quite a portfolio career in that aspect, albeit it has been in these industries. But what it's allowed me to do is come back into an organisation and help partners and their teams, Fionas and their teams, or other marketers and BD people
mm,
understand how to do better sales enablement as part of their marketing roles. So whether that's in front of the
yeah.
client or facilitating the client. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Really interesting. So let's talk about the sectors that you've worked in, that you've operated in. They're quite complex. So professional services, built environment, quite complex sectors.
Yeah.
What are the unique challenges you think that marketers face in those spaces, and how have you kind of worked to address those? As opposed to other sectors that you may have come across or spoken to other marketers. Is there anything unique in those?
So I think it goes back to my points around the structures of those businesses, understanding a partnership model versus understanding a corporate model.
Mm,
But let's focus on something like the built environment, where you've
mm,
got the complexities of the whole ecosystem of what that looks like.
yeah,
Because real estate touches everybody, all of us. And
yeah,
so, during COVID, when times were tough, we were asking our landlords to be kinder to us about our rent, or, we were worried about, all sorts of ways we were going to use, our shops and all that kind of thing. So there's all that stuff that touches us. So that's a
mm,
significant and distinct thing about the sector itself. But it's the complexity about everybody that's involved, and that's from the investor down
mm,
to who's using the space, down to who's designing it. And when you're a service provider in that sector, you need to really have a number of stakeholders within that mix. Cut to then
yeah,
being a marketer and a business developer, helping that organization grapple with those client relationships, those investor relationships, helping them promote their work. You can't really productize it. Well, we're now moving into
yeah,
productizing interesting things in that space. I mean, real estate marketing and development marketing seen as taken on its own type of product. But this goes back to the B2B model, which is understanding that real estate is a people business,
yeah,
not unlike insurance, not like the legal sector, not unlike consultancy. And it's really understanding
yeah,
that those relationships are key. So the promotion of that brand in and around that needs to be the supporting vehicle. And that's the thing that marketers and BD people need to understand. So there's so many complexities around it. It is also a real barometer of the economy, and it's often ignored. And I was looking at some stats around this. So it employs over 12 million people in the UK. I've got some numbers in front of me, and contributes to 1.7 billion to the UK GDP. So they might be smaller numbers when you say, well, so what? So does Infotech, when we look at other sort of bigger data. But there's a whole ecosystem in and around that. And it's quite extraordinary how complex it is. So a marketer and a business developer, they have to really deeply understand the complexities of that business, but also how fragile it is. How fragile it is in the economy, and being a marketer in that space and understanding what your competitors are doing. It goes back to what I was saying earlier about being clear on those basic principles about going to market. So I think as long as you've got that in your toolbox, I understand my stakeholder mix. I understand the right type of marketing and business development strategic direction, and I understand this business model that I'm operating in. And I think whether you're agency or client side, you've got to understand the business's operating model, because often people don't, and that helps you understand decision making, lead in time, getting stuff done. Which is what we're here to do: get stuff done in the right way.
Yeah, and always having that one eye on that more macro socioeconomic kind of situation that's developing.
Yeah, and the balance sheet is key.
So you're a storyteller, you're a writer. Do you bring that into your role?
I try to. So where I'm operating in roles where I'm leading a team or providing insight, I won't always get into the detail of a campaign at that level, but I try not to let AI do all the work, and so I do write as a hobby. I do share my thoughts on things that I see or inspire me. And I've done a lot of that in and around, travel writing or sharing insights around a particular business issue. And in the past, in my roles, I've put together full comprehensive brochures, but I've really enjoyed the process again. So getting down to, the issues at heart and doing them in hopefully a way that is enjoyable to read. Making sure that campaigns and thought leadership and content, is enjoyable to put together, but also to read. And I've had the pleasure of collaborating with some fantastic contributors and writers, in the legal sector. I've got some great memories of some fantastic work that I've done. Some of the lawyers there, or with teams, especially seeing them grow into their love of the craft as well.
Right.
I would warn, though, I think we need to watch out for, as creatives, as writers as well. I made a joke about AI doing all the work, and we've all seen that meme. I don't want AI to do my writing, so I've got more time to do the dishes. It should be the other way around. I think there's an element of us needing to deal with volume and speed, but taking away the aspects of why you've put something together. I think if you're going to be looking at AI to replace that in what you do, I think I would be very wary of marketers falling into that trap of editing AI copy, because you do lose a little bit of that heart. I know it's all about the prompts, and I know it's all about the speed of which to get things done. And I'd be interested in your thoughts in and around that as well. But where we can automate and where we can, be smarter about our approach. I think that's something that we need to be, mindful of.
Yeah.
But at the same point,
Yeah.
I do enjoy the process.
Yes, I agree with you. I think I use it for research. I use it for ideas outside of my own ideas, just to see if I've missed anything. But I wouldn't use it as the sole source
Yeah.
of information for a piece. No, absolutely not, because the idea for the piece has to come from my own brain, and then I will supplement that with AI. I would never say, give me 20 blog titles. I
Oh
would
my
come
goodness.
up
Well, you
with the
lose the
blog for
authorship as well,
myself.
don't you? I mean, you know this better than
Yeah.
me. You lose the authorship, but you don't actually own it. So that whole thing about, what we're putting out into the world. So where I don't get an opportunity to write so much in my current roles, I do make sure that the writing happens. But from a personal perspective, I mean, I do like to try and put a piece out every other month. Mainly, I write about what's going on in my old hometown in Melbourne whenever I visit and
Right.
how it's changed.
Yeah.
I love writing about cities. I love writing about
Right.
places. I like writing about places
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then I'll
And
do the
that's your
business
own
issue stuff
unique
as well.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
AI can't replicate your experience, can it?
No, and we might use one of those tools to say, hey, remember that trip you went on? You haven't written something yet. And maybe that's the prompt.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Just to give you the nudge that you need.
yeah, nudge is okay.
Agreed. Yeah. I don't want it taking over the job. Um, So interesting that you've talked about the legal sector and writing in the legal sector, actually, because I imagine, and I sort of have this conception that maybe that's a bit of a dry topic to write about, but you've kind of just made me challenge that in my own mind to say that it actually is really interesting, and you can be quite, you've written quite creatively about the legal sector and about the services. So that's quite interesting to me, because I would have thought that that was quite a dry topic, if you like.
Yeah, I completely understand that. I think where you're advising clients around regulation and compliance and legal issues and legal matters, they should be taken seriously. But also, I think this goes back to your really interesting question about how we're telling some of our stories about how we're solving problems or being, coming to the aid of or advising or assisting clients. I think that's always an interesting story. But it doesn't mean, you need to make light of some of the more, litigious things that clients need to be aware of. Having said that, all your competitors are going to be doing something in the same way. So
Yeah.
how then do you cut through that noise? And I think that's a point where you might choose to do something in a more impactful way by using examples of where you've solved problems for clients, and writing about that is where the creativity and the impact comes from, I think. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's been good
Yeah. Good
experiences of
point.
that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I know
And
we've
also,
talked sort of
with the
briefly.
form of content
Yeah.
as well, long formal reports and understanding what people have time to read, especially if you've got a really sophisticated group of clients who can pick something out of the newspaper or, on media any day. You've really got to give them
Yeah.
something that says, well, what can I do with this? And I think that's the bit that enables it to feel less dry. Yeah.
Yeah, and are you looking at alternative sort of medium, like video? Because I know video is sort of taking marketing by storm, really. Is that
Yeah.
something that you've been exploring?
Explored, used, experimented. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think in the last 5 years, we've all realized, shorter form, short sound bites, having your business leader or somebody in that team experiencing that. And I think video is really powerful, and it's just easier to digest. And also, it helps with things like if you've got a report that you really want people to get their teeth into, well, they might not want to do it all in one go. So you're just going to give them the headlines. And that's why video is so great,
Yeah.
because you can anchor it to, and it will be part of those channels that you're using as well. So I don't think everything needs to sort of stand out on its own. And video is not the panacea of a campaign. And if we were all doing video, we'd all be, it would just be one massive
Bored.
social media channel. So we've really got to have things that make sense and be suitable, because there will be a point where your client is sitting by the pool on their holiday and thinks, I've got time to actually take that in a bit more.
Yeah.
So I think it really helps. I think it really accompanies that sort of different type of content.
Yeah, and I think that leads nicely on to the next point. And I know we've talked about different stakeholders, and different groups of audiences that you have to kind of tailor marketing to. And I guess that, the medium, the content, the message is always different for the stakeholder groups that you're working with. So is that particularly kind of challenging in a sector like the built environment where there is multiple stakeholders?
I think the challenges are there. I mean, I think we're all exposed to the same sorts of channels these days, and digital media has really taken shape. But I think there are misconceptions about what those different channels do. And so a quick example could be a client might want their website updated, but that's not going to give you work. That's not necessarily going to be the answer to your solution. So it's really helping people understand what their need is, but also how they're actually meeting the needs of their customers, and how they're communicating that, or how they're making those connections. And it really doesn't have to be anything like a full suite of expensive marketing. It could be just some simple measures to help them. Of course, if you've got a website that's 5 years out of date, it's a given that you're going to be making some changes. But it's also understanding the imperative lies in making sure that it's connected to that business, and it's actually delivering against commercial goals.
Yeah, having an impact.
I've got to get in front of people and bring in more work. There might be a variety of things that we need to do. So answering the challenge there is getting people to understand. The solution isn't the thing. It's more, let's find out what the commercial cause is.
Yes, yeah. And I had that recently where someone in sales said, can we talk about SEO? We need more leads. Let's talk about SEO. And SEO isn't the answer to that. SEO is a long-term strategic initiative that takes time to have an impact. That isn't going to drive leads in the short term. So let's look at something else.
Exactly. These are the conversations we have as well, and it goes back to understanding what all of this is for. But I think we're in a place, particularly in the last 7 years, where digital has become a driver in the strategic mix. Powered by tech, powered by AI, and all the great things that you're looking at. It's at the practically at the forefront, whereas before it was somewhere in the back somewhere, and everyone was talking about other things, the printed product and all those sorts of things. I mean, I've seen advertising being really strong, paid media being really strong again, which is great, just depending in the B2B world, which I think is really interesting. If you were to ask me some of the things that are kind of hanging around in B2B, I would definitely say, advertising is not over.
No, definitely not. I think it's just taking a slightly different format, and moving with the times. Which, what I really love, the campaigns that I've really loved recently are the ones that have used AI to kind of, almost augment reality on a billboard, a digital
Oh,
billboard, for
fabulous.
example.
Yeah, they're
Then
great.
show that on social media as if it's really happening, and everyone's sort of, oh, wow, it's really
Yeah.
confusing, and everyone's wowed by it. I really like that sort of augmented reality
That
advertising. I
sounds
think that's
great.
been really
The
clever.
integration's really cool as well.
Yeah, it's really smart, isn't it? I think obviously it's going to be, have its day, and then it'll be on to the next thing. But I think things like that are really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. More of that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so in every industry, we're talking about sustainability, and ESG, and the environment. So I guess sustainability is a major focus for the built environment. How have you been incorporating this into your marketing strategies and messages, with an eye on not perpetuating greenwashing, if you like?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a key thing. I think if we're talking sustainability or broader ESG agenda, property and built environment is a great contributor to some of those issues. We've seen some great organisations fall by the wayside, so the governance piece needs to be looked at in a big way, I think. Environmentally, how are we using buildings? So that's something that I look at with my colleagues in another role that I pursue with the Property and Built Environment Group for the Institute of Directors, where I chair that group. Our members have ESG at the forefront, and so making sure as marketers that those brands are coming across in an authentic way in how they're going to market as well. So it could be really simple things like not only what people are saying, but making sure that that is authenticated. But there's also, if you're running an event, it could be simple things like having a bunch of plastic merch or paper products or huge stands and things like that that don't actually live up to your values. So one way you're saying we're a sustainable business, and the next you're off on a plane somewhere with a huge plastic stand, etc. So you've really got to not offset it, but get rid of it. Yeah, and so I think businesses these days and marketers are part of that conversation to help influence that, to say, if we're doing something in this way, is it the best way? Do we need to use all this resource, or could we
Yeah.
do it another way? So I think that we do have a responsibility in that sense, and it does feed into some of the bigger issues that the property and built environment face, which I've alluded to. But in the marketing world, I think how we go to market is really, really crucial. And that
Yeah,
does lend
I
itself
agree. And I
to mitigating the greenwashing thing, because you need to put you need to really evidence that value.
Yeah, live the value. And yeah, like I think marketers actually can be very instrumental in
Yeah,
driving that change and just saying,
absolutely.
absolutely no, we're not going to do single use stands that just get disposed of every time we have a new product enhancement, or an update to the product messaging or whatever it is. And look at alternatives, digital stands, or just use something generic with a screen that changes, and give away high quality items that will last and have an impact on somebody's life, not something that they're going to throw away after a single use, or it's going to break, or, adding to that kind of waste. I think events particularly are incredibly wasteful, and kind of going paper free and going digital with everything, I think, is a really good step forward.
Yeah,
I've done
it
that
is.
in my work. Yeah,
It
I
is.
try
And I
not
know
to
there
buy
was the
anything.
debate a few years ago about will the in-person event go away. No, it won't, because we're human beings and we like to connect and we like to do
Yeah,
things. But everything that you've said, we've got an opportunity as marketers to really question and influence. But even repurposing our own content or repurposing the use of things that we've already done,
yeah,
that's sustainability too. We don't need to kind of reinvent the wheel each time we go to market on something. We can think about how we're driving those conversations better with things that we've done, which with things that are meaningful in that way. Yeah.
yeah, agreed. And it kind of moves on to the next point, really, which is about trust and building trust.
Yeah.
Obviously, trust in any marketing role, that's the panacea. We're trying to build trust with our target audience. Maybe even before they've encountered us, we need to build that trust remotely. We need to kind of show that we are a trustworthy partner. So how do you approach that sort of trust building piece in your marketing effort?
With internal stakeholders, that's simply by listening.
Yeah.
And I think, when we've talked about what do our clients need, I mean, it's understanding what the heart of their issue, and working through in a consultative manner how you might be able to support or get them to where they need to be. And I think that's just
Yeah.
simply by building that relationship and having that early rapport. But that comes from listening, as it is that we would listen to our clients and understand. I've taken this on board. I'm building a rapport with you. I think I can't be any simpler than that about it. And trust takes time. Trust is something that you earn through doing good work and being a good listener.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there are things we can do remotely which help build trust, which things like demonstrating that we've worked with other clients in the sector and that they trust us, then it's like that second hand trust. It's like, oh, well, if my contemporary trusts this business, then I can trust that business more. Things like, awards and recognition, things like that. But I think it does take time, and I don't think you're not going to get that overnight. And just simply saying we're trustworthy is, of course, not enough.
Yeah, I mean, endorsements are good, and especially in the environments that we've worked in, people say, "Oh, who else have you worked with? Who else have you done this for?" People do need to know that. That's absolutely key.
Yeah.
Absolutely key.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think once you're in an organisation and you've got a varying group of stakeholders, particularly in a partnership where they are a business of one, essentially, you've got to build those singular relationships and singular understanding, and that does take a little bit of
Yeah.
time as well.
And I guess with you, for my next sort of point, with you being business development and marketing, you're taking the lead on both of those. How do you measure your success? Is it purely through the numbers? It's how much business have you actually generated for that client? Or do you measure any other KPIs to see how successful you've been?
I think soft metrics are good too. So it can be things like have I impacted some sort of shift? What is that shift? Is it behavioral? Is it relationship? Is it something? Is it the trust mechanism that we were talking about before?
Yeah.
So I think you need to use a mix, especially when you're developing relationships. It can be things like, what's the engagement level? What's the rapport?
Yeah.
And I think it needs to be a mix of the two. And I was talking about this with the team yesterday. Where do you track something that's happened? If a piece of work that's come in, did it come from the conference? Did it come from our Marcoms, or did it come from a conversation that I've been having for 3 years building?
Yeah.
Or is it all of those things? So I think it's multifaceted in terms of those channels, but you need to have some. I think you need to have the harder metrics to give you something for the reach. You do need that, but I would also add to the equation those softer things that come. So definitely, have I enabled, better conversations to occur as a result? Have I been able to reach that person in an easier way? That kind of thing, I would suggest. And so I'll give you a more tangible example for an event you might be holding in a business-to-business arena. Did you get your internal stakeholders to engage and share and, help promote the event? Yes. That's a win as well, that sort of thing. So in
Yeah.
terms of some of the more the behavioral aspects in the area that I operate, I would count that. Yeah. And I advise the team to as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've always been fairly sort of cut and dried with inbound leads, number of inbound leads. If marketing efforts are working, then the number of people calling in or asking for a demo or asking for a meeting is high. But then I've started to look at things like conversion rates, how many visitors are converting to an inbound, or how many inquiries come off the back of a campaign that may be a combination. But it's just looking at different metrics for change or progress, I think is important as well.
I didn't dwell on it, but I also think, digital selling is really, really key. So LinkedIn, for example,
Yeah.
you can really trust the data in terms of click rates, impression rates, etc., because that starts to show engagement. So it all adds to the
Yeah.
mix. And I think it's really key to kind of consider the whole integration. So when you're asking me, how do I consider it from a business development and marketing aspect, I do like to focus on some of the softer aspects as well, because I think that's where some of the core shift happens.
Yeah, they're all indicators of success. Yeah. Okay, so shall we just go back to the tech piece and talk a little bit about tech and MarTech? So, I mean, it's a kind of big focus for me, but how has technology shaped marketing in your sectors and for you particularly?
Oh, in a major way. And I think we were talking about it earlier, the integration of AI tools, whether they've been built by that company or buying in something majorly, and where things like CRM systems were nothing more than a spreadsheet as little as 5 to 10 years ago for some organizations, and having that integration of where your CRM systems are now having to be part of, the billing process as well, which is great. So these are things that you would have thought maybe a given, should have been a given maybe 10 years ago. They have to be part of the process, and, marketing teams becoming much more reliant on them. So they might have had systems that were in place about 5 years ago. I'm trying not to name names on this or anything like that.
I know what you mean.
People
Yeah.
are going into a place of, we need to upgrade our systems today. They need to have that compatibility. They need to be integrated with our billing systems and cycles. They need to be able to speak with and be part of the fee earners day. They need to be accessible. Everyone needs to be part of and use them. So it's coming from a place of, this was a marketing product to this is a business product. And that's the shape that we're seeing. But then, of course, you'll be looking at systems to support operational teams, but it's all about enabling those teams to work in a more integrated way. And that's what we're getting to, trying to cut against the silo. the
Yeah,
silo team
yeah.
working, that does tend to happen, and that's fine as long as you're sort of understanding of it. But I think there's going to be much more integration and collaboration powered by those tools. So that's what we're seeing now. Perhaps we should have had it a few years earlier, but it's definitely at the forefront of how we're working.
Yeah, and I think there's one or two leaders in the space who are doing that really well. They're doing every piece, the marketing, the CRM, the
All of
sales,
it.
the business development, yeah, the operations, the billing, everything is it's that full life cycle, isn't it? That full customer life cycle
It
from
is, yeah.
pre-client right through to, yeah,
And I think internal
evangelist.
marketer's job there, if you were to ask me in terms of this specific space, it's about how we get your wider users involved. Like I said, how do you get the whole business brought onto it? So that's the opportunity. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah, agreed. And getting them out of the mindset of this is just a marketing platform and this is something that supports the whole business. And are there any tools, specific tools or technologies that you couldn't live without at this point?
Well, definitely the tools I alluded to. So those sort of operational CRM tools and having that integration.
It's an absolute must to have
It's an
that in
absolute
place,
must.
really.
Yeah, yeah. I think the integration piece is key. So things like, HubSpot, fantastic. It's a really sort of integrative and intuitive tool
Yeah.
that we're going to be seeing more of, and I think Monday.com as well.
Yeah, interesting. I haven't used Monday, but I'm a big HubSpot fan. I
For
love it for
sure.
big businesses, small businesses. I'm using it for my own business. I'm using it for client businesses as well. I think it's just fantastic. And every time I think about how a software should work and how easy it should be to use, I think of HubSpot because everything just works. It all fits together, all it does everything. You can see all your clarity of data. Yeah, I absolutely love it. I think, and with all the AI tools enabled now as well, I think it's just streets ahead of anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I'm enjoying Canva as well.
Yeah, I do love Canva. I think Canva's so huge that actually you just scratch the surface. There's so
Yeah.
many different apps and different add-ons to Canva that I could really get lost in that. But yeah, it's an
Yes.
everyday tool for me as well.
Yeah, yeah. I've just
Yeah.
scratched the surface as well. So yeah. But
Mm,
those are the two
yeah.
key ones for me. I really enjoy.
Yeah. They're everyday tools, aren't they?
Yeah.
Definitely. And then, we did talk about AI briefly before. What do you think? Where do you think AI is going? Where do you see the most potential? Is it in terms of prompting to do something or to enhance your current workflows, or are you seeing AI kind of taking over and changing the way that you do your work?
It'll be led by the user. So as it begins to learn from you, I mean, it's great. You can use it as an assistant. You can use it for all sorts of menial things,
Mm,
just and as a time saver to corroborate your gut feel on a lot of things. As we spoke of earlier, I think
mm,
it's good to have it there as a resource. But there are aspects of Copilot, for example, which are really fascinating, and I think again I've only scratched the surface there as well, where you're looking for a way to quickly facilitate, like you said before, research or
mm.
summarizing or making things easier and quicker, but not
Yeah,
replicating the creative process.
yeah.
And I've had, I went to a fascinating seminar where a lawyer was talking about authorship of AI and creativity and the trademarking of
Mm,
creativity, which is something that's key for marketers. AI just adds another kind of complexity to the mix. So it's
mm.
it's definitely there. It's very powerful. It's more powerful than we recognize. The speed of which will accelerate. It'll be exacerbated by that usage. I think I'm only scratching the surface of its capabilities from a personal perspective. It's doing a lot more than we realize. But that's all I would
Yeah.
say, that as creatives, let's not have it replicate that as well, because it's a muscle that we all use, and it's a muscle that we need to continue to use.
Yeah, and I think it mirrors the views of a lot of other marketers that I've spoken to. I think it's not something that you would want to rely on 100%, because, like you say, your knowledge would get kind of flabby, and
Yes.
you could
Yeah,
actually
I
kind of
do.
lose
I do.
skills, essential
You
skills.
need to be constantly working that.
Yeah, yeah. I have to say there are tech products that I see and that I review that I think I would actually squeeze into a workflow that weren't there before. So I am actually looking at different tools and thinking, where could I fit this into my role or for my clients? Because it's things that I've never considered before. It's not something that I've ever, and we talked about sort of that augmented reality. I would love to know how I could squeeze that into a marketing campaign or some sort of marketing efforts in order to just stand out, because I think it's not something that you would be doing prior to AI. You would never, augmented reality and virtual reality is not something that you would typically associate with business to business, but I actually think there are different mechanisms and different things
Oh
sort of
yeah.
popping up that we could bring in. Particularly actually in the built environment, I could see augmented reality really becoming
Well,
huge.
and it was, all the metaverse work, was, everything that was happening 5 years ago around that. I mean, that was the big shift. I mean, real estate and brands, retail,
Yeah,
that was a real communication vehicle. Huge, 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 huge. And I agree with you. It's about enhancing your delivery and capability for sure. I mean, ideation and innovation. You should be the designer of that. And I think that's the thing. We need to just learn how to drive it. That's from personal perspective. Just need to learn how to drive it. But I think for, as consultants or freelancers or working in house teams, just really understanding how to utilize it and enhance what we do. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
exciting, really
agreed.
exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting, isn't it? I would be lost without some of the tools that I use now.
I know
I think if I had to go back to doing everything from scratch, I'd be
it would
quite
feel so
upset
much
about
harder.
it. Yeah, it really would. Yeah, it really would take so much longer. Um, so, I mean, outside of the kind of AI conversation, where do you think marketing is going in the next 5 to 10 years? Have you got any kind of predictions or anything, any trends that you see developing?
I think we're just going to see more of tech advancement. As I
Yeah.
was saying before, where digital was the kind of quieter cousin outside the channel mix, it's now at the forefront of a lot of what we do. I think that's just going to be out in front. Certainly
Yeah.
in my lifetime. I don't think that's going to
Yeah.
shift or change, and I think we're just going to get to a space of more augmentation. But conversely, the paradox is this: we're driving towards authenticity and purpose-led brands. We're driving
Yeah.
towards, reaching our communities in a more authentic and storytelling way.
Yeah.
So we need to work out in the near future how we do that, coupled with AI and tech, because we're
Yeah.
in a space now of tech speaking to tech. We're not part of the conversation. So we really need to make
Yeah.
sure that we grapple that. I just think it's a really interesting space for us, but we need to be at the heart of that. So if you were going to ask me what the
Yeah.
trend is, I think we're just going to see this amplified. That would be my view, and I'd be interested in what your view is. So I welcome it, but we just need to be part of all that.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, that authenticity is prized, yet
Purpose.
we're all embracing, yeah, and purpose and having values that you companies live by is seen as the goal, but then also, yeah, marrying that with mass-produced content or you know, digital
Like you say,
content that
augmentation. You said it. You know, the
yeah,
augmentation of reality.
yeah.
That's interesting.
That's quite a tricky, yeah, it's quite a tricky,
What's the
how do those two
apex?
intersect? Exactly. Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I do think
Yeah,
that
that's where I
human
think we are.
created, yeah, and the original content, I think, is becoming more prized. So, you know, creative content and sort of human made content will become more valuable as there's a glut of AI generated content. Those
As we have
authentic
that
human
fatigue.
pieces will, yeah, exactly. So, you know, where you see maybe AI generated movies, I think the, you know, hand animated will become more prized and even more valuable. So it's kind of like that maybe there's this sea of mediocre AI generated content, and then there's the, like this, you know, really kind of prized, expensive, valued content up here, which is the original content. Because, you know, with all the will in the world, the AI content can't come up with original thoughts. The whole point of AI is to make predictions based on what's already happened, not be genuinely authentic and new. So yeah, I think it's interesting.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you could use social media as the barometer for that, as well as, you know, 5 years' time, you'll have automated profiles speaking to automated profiles, or, you know, you could be getting into a space of, you know, where's the human in all of this, and telling that
Mm,
human story. But I, you know, echo everything that you said. Looking for that
mm,
human connection is going to be really interesting. Cut through the noise that way.
yeah, absolutely. Um, well, just one final question for you. Do you have a parting piece of advice for other marketing leaders who are working maybe in niche sectors? Anything that you want to leave them with?
Yeah, just stay curious, stay creative, and stay true to the craft, and be open to all the new tech that's around us, and get involved in how to really harness that potential that you have. If you are staying in a particular industry, that's also okay. But it also doesn't hurt to branch out and try different things, and broaden that horizon. Yeah.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.